Hi BookTube, this is Lindsay from Lindsay Reads. Today I'm going to be doing a tag, the Get to Know Ya tag. I wasn't tagged in this video, I was actually tagged in the My Neighborhood tag, but I haven't had time to put in the research that I want to do for that video, so that will be up and coming. But for now I'm going to do this tag. And I couldn't find the original creator. The video was taken down, but you can search and find this tag. So let's see, the first question is, what's your favorite book? I don't actually have a all-time favorite book, and it's kind of silly to say, but I've read so many books, and there's so many favorites that I have, so I just thought I would pick my favorite fiction book from last year, and that is Ohio by Stephen Markley. It was published in 2018, and it's about a group of friends who knew each other in high school and set in the Rust Belt in Ohio in the 2000s, and they're friends in high school, and then they are dispersed after high school, and it's all about it all culminates in one or two nights, like 5 or 6 years later, after college or what have you, that they've gone in through life, and how they've all come together in random ways to become reacquainted with each other. And it's a lot more than that. It has suspense, it has drama, it has some comedy, so it has a lot of genres crammed into one book. Okay, so number 2, what was your favorite book 5 years ago? So I had a look at my Goodreads, because I can't remember all the books I read 5 years ago. And so from what I read 5 years ago, my favorite book of that time is by Anne Rice. It's The Witching Hour, and it was published in 1990. And this book really stuck out to me because I remember the setting so well. Like for a vampire series and for this series as well, it's set in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I haven't read the vampire series. I'm not too interested in it, to be honest, but witches and witchcraft and magic, that cost me more. And so that's how I picked up this book, and it's like a family saga of going through these different generations of witches and warlocks, and how they use their powers during different decades, all set in New Orleans. So you see in the 1920s, and you see you go on through history with witchcraft mixed in. It's a pretty big book, but I remember flying through it. So that was my favorite from 5 years ago. Okay, so number 3, favorite series. And for this one, when I think of favorite series, I'm thinking of fantasies, really long fantasy series. And so this one is one I've actually read twice, and I just finished the second book again last year, so I'm planning on keep going with this series for my third reread. And this is, as you can see from all the pictures, it's a 14-book series, and this one here is a prequel. I haven't actually read the prequel, but if you're just reading the series, there's 14 books in the series. It's the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. And the first book, it's kind of like Lord of the Rings. It really reminds me of that, the journey through the woods and the small town that they're in, and they're seeing the world. But after that point, I think it really finds its own throughout the series. So it's about 3 characters, Matt, Rand, and Perrin, and they all have their own characteristics. They all have their own powers, and it's their journey through meeting kings and queens in different lands. And it's a really fun series. I know it's quite an overwhelming amount of books that you'd have to read, but I've just found them very rereadable. I'm reading it for the 3rd time now, so yeah, that's my favorite series. Okay, so let's see, number 4. What was the last book you read? And I just mentioned this in another video. It's the Betsy, Tacy, and Tip by Maud Hart Lovelace, and this was published in 1941. And it's the second book in her Betsy Tacy series. And if you want to find out more of my thoughts from this book, You can look at the previous video I just posted. Okay, number 5. What was the last book of poetry that I've read? This one I just finished like 2 days ago. And it's Once in the West by Christian Wyman. And I just love the cover. And it's published in 2014. And this one I was really surprised by, like the amount of language it had in it. I don't know. When I think of poetry, I don't read that much poetry. It just happened, like, when they're asking about what's the last book of poetry, I just happened to have read one 2 days ago. But I probably will pick up like 1 or 2 poetry collections a year. I really want to get more into that. And so, but yeah, it had swearing in it. And for some reason, I was kind of taken aback by that, because when I think of poetry, I'm thinking of like, the school years, when you're in like, middle school, high school, and college, where you're kind of like reading these classic works of poetry. So this was like a modern collection. It was pretty short. I went through it, as poetry collection, you can kind of fly through it. And it's one I definitely want to reread again. I think the more I reread it, the more I'll get out of it. And so since I just finished this book, I will be talking about it more in depth in my weekly wrap-up. So stay tuned for that one. Okay, so number 6, a book that most influential in my life. There's been a couple of books that have really impacted me, but I thought I would talk about this one that I read in 2017. Let me get a picture of it. It's really cute. Let me zoom in. Really cute picture. There's a cute little piglet on the cover. This is Farm Sanctuary, Changing Hearts and Minds About Animals and Food, and this is by Jean Bauer, and it was published in 2008. And I had come across this book when I was in a used bookstore, and I love reading about nature and animals, and so I was just browsing through that section, where they have like the birds and the cats and dogs, and this was just sticking out, and the cover drew me in, with a little piglet on it. And at first I thought, it was about, the farm life and, raising chickens and cows and whatnot. But I was surprised, it's talking, Farm Sanctuary, talking about animals farm animals that have been rescued and are on this farm sanctuary where it's like a no-kill shelter where, they're taking in farm animals and saving their lives, basically, instead of being butchered for meat. They actually can live out a happy and long life. And so this book impacted me because it turned me into a vegetarian, and I've been a vegetarian ever since reading this book. Because it just brought to my attention how all the animals have, their own wants and needs. They're human, basically, like us, because they have their own thoughts, they have their own wants and needs, and they're people too. And so that just started me on a journey of completely looking at meat in a whole new light. And so that for sure was an influential book. Okay, so number 7 is a book that made me ugly cry. I don't get too emotional with books. This book I just happened to have read after a really sad point in my life last year, when my longtime pet, a cat, passed away like out of the blue. And so I just needed to pick me up that day, and I think it was the next day, where I was just so depressed, and I just needed to get out of the house for a bit. And so of course I went to a bookstore, and I was just looking, through the shelves, and then they like in the front of the aisle, they had like a little section of like books they were trying to sell, and it was a book about a cat. And so I just thought it would be a good time, to make me think of like the happy times I had with my cat instead of dwelling on, losing him. And so this book is Dewey's 9 Lives, The Legacy of the Small Town Library Cat Who Inspired Millions. And so I had read her other book. Let's see, what was it called? I think it was like Dewey the Library Cat. Let me just see. Dewey the Small Town Library Cat Who Touched the World. So this one is like 9 lives, and it's 9 short stories. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, this was written by Vicki Myron and was published in 2008. And so I had read the first one, and I recognized the cat on this book cover. And in the first book, Dewey the Library Cat, it's about how some random person dropped off this cat in like the library drop-off box in the middle of the winter in an Ohioan small town, and Ohio, Iowa. And Iowa's a small town, like in the middle of winter. You can just imagine how cold that must have been. And so this librarian comes in to open up the library in the morning, and she discovers this cat. And so the book is all about the interactions the cat has with the customers and how of an impact he has on the customers, lightening their days, or whatever the cat gets up to. It's a really fun, sweet story. And so this book, it's a 9 lives of Dewey. It's 9 short stories, and they're not all about Dewey. I think there's 1 or 2 short stories that are talking about this library cat, but the rest of them are like people who have written in, who wrote into this author after reading the first book, and all about how their interactions with their cats. And it made me cry because it did exactly what I wanted it to do. It's all talking about like the happy moments and the joys that pets can bring you, and there's just it included pictures, and it was just the perfect read for what I wanted. But I did cry in it because I was just all sad about my cat. But other than that, I don't think I've ever cried about a book. So, but that one I do have an answer for at least. Okay, so number 8, a happier note, a book that made me laugh. And so for this one, it's a book I'm currently reading actually, and I was just laughing today earlier reading it, and it is Cotillion by Georgette Heyer. I think Heyer or Hare. I think it's Heyer, and it was published in 1953, and it's so funny. It's making me laugh because it's about a family. It's about a group of nephews. This great uncle has this fortune, and he's ill and he's old, and so he's thinking about his will. And so he decides he doesn't have any kids of his own. He's adopted this girl from a young age, but she's not related to him. And so he thinks he's not going to give the money to her. But he has these great nephews, and so he's like, I will give this money to you, whichever one of you marries the adopted daughter. And so, the daughter she's like, no, I'm not going to marry any of you. I don't like any of you. I don't want to be forced. I've grown up with this uncle. I don't have to rely on any of you. I can rely on my great uncle's wealth. And then the nephews will surprise her. Well, actually, you don't know. You won't have this fortune unless you pick one of us. And so she's kind of forced into this. And the story isn't as sad as it sounds, because it's all like very humorous. They're all quite. They're really well drawn out characters. Like each of them have their own distinct personality, and you don't know exactly which one to root for because they all have their own quirks. And so I haven't finished the book yet, so I can't tell you what I think of it in the end. But so far, it's making me laugh. Her struggles and her she's going on like dates, kind of, I guess, with some of these, and she's trying to help some of them, and she hates some of them, and so it's just her interactions are real fun. Okay, so number 9, character you'd like to be for the day. And so I chose a book I recently read last month. And it's Wondersmith. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this through BookTube, because that's how I had heard of it. Wondersmith, The Calling of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. And it was published in 2018. And this is the second book in the Nevermore series. And I don't know a particular character I'd want to be in this world, but I would just like to be in the world. It's like, it sounds very like, it's kind of like pulling in the Harry Potter Hogwarts kind of vibe, where it's like the wintertime, and there's a room. Morgan lives in this like hotel that there's some rooms that it's changing the room according to her wants and needs. And so it just sounds so pleasant to me. If it's wintertime, and it has like the warm fireplace and like the cozy setting, and then of course there's magic involved, and it's like a children's YA series, and so all of that just makes it very pleasant sounding to me. And so I would like to be in that world. So number 10, a book so good that you dreamt about it. I have never dreamt about a book, so I can't really answer this one. But if you have read a book so good that you start dreaming about it, let me know. Because I'd be curious to see what answers that would have. So let's see. Number 11, a book that I DNF'd. So let's see, let me pull this one up. And this one is The Accursed by Joyce Carol Oates. Even though I DNF'd this book, I will still give Joyce Carol Oates a try. I think this is the first book. I haven't read any other ones by her, I don't believe. And this one came out in 2013. I didn't get very too far into it. It was a real big chunker of a book, and it just didn't really interest me at all. Like, it started out with focusing on Woodrow Wilson and his time at Princeton, and it focused on like another professor, and just like I think I read like maybe like 5-10% of it, and it was just boring to me, and it was kind of like slow paced, and it just didn't draw me in like I wanted it to. But I do plan on picking up more of Joyce Carol Oates, and if you've read her before and have a favorite book by her, let me know, because I would love to find my way into liking one of her books. Okay, so the last question, number 12, a book that you're excited to read. And this one I put a hold on at my library, and I've been waiting for it. And it just came in, and so I'm going to hopefully read it this week or next week. And it's Cosmos by Carl Sagan. And this came out in 1980. And even though it came out in 1980, it seems very relevant. Because, science, has advanced. But from what I gather, he's a smart guy, and so now a lot of it seems to be outdated. And so since I haven't read the book, I thought I'd read a bit of the description. Let's see. Sagan explores 15 billion years of cosmic evolution and the development of science and civilization. Cosmos traces the origins of knowledge and the scientific method, mixing science and philosophy, and speculates to the future of science. The book also discusses the underlying premises of science by providing biographical anecdotes about many prominent scientists throughout history, placing their contributions into the broader context of the development of modern science. And I don't know a lot about the cosmos and space, and so I thought this would be a very good book for me to start with. And so yeah, that's the tag. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Feel free. The questions didn't end with me having to tag anyone, but if you're interested in doing the tag, feel free to do so. So yeah, thank you, BookTube.